Right, today I want to talk about my counselling experience. I don't want to say that my experience is reflective of everybody's experience with counselling. I think I've had two very extremes of counselling. I would say that my first counsellor was definitely not for me. My second counsellor was a lot better. I still don't think I was ready for counselling. At any stage I had counselling, I don't think I was fully ready for it to take place. I think for me it was probably the first counsellor I went to see to. I probably rushed myself into it a lot quicker than what I should have done, and probably wasn't ready to speak to anybody about it at that point. I just felt like the way she was trying to get me to deal with it wasn't how I was ready to deal with it. She made me feel like a lot of what had happened to me was my fault. Probably wasn't what she was trying to do at all. But for me, I just really didn't feel like it helped, and it could have gone a hell of a lot better. I only went to her for a couple of sessions. It was through my college thing. But the first counsellor definitely wasn't for me, and it sort of put me off wanting to continue down the counselling route, but I did persevere. I did organise a counsellor through the NHS, which meant I only got 8 weeks of it, which in some respects probably wasn't long enough, but in some ways felt like it was too long. It was through like my doctors, so it was weird because I was filling in a lot of paperwork. I did a lot of questionnaires and forms and things like that. It was when I was first labelled as having depression and anxiety. I don't know why I'm doing this, but that's what it's called. It was the first time it was properly labelled that's what I've got. And she gave me a lot of coping mechanisms. She helped me talk through a lot of problems that I have personally. Obviously, with being sexually abused, there's a lot to go through. Having just an hour at a time was great because it meant that I could go in, sit down, talk about what I needed to, and I didn't feel like I was in there for too long. It didn't feel like it was a drawn out process. And each session pinpointed different things for me, and it really helped to establish, like I say, coping mechanisms, things that necessarily I wouldn't have thought of myself and other people wouldn't have thought of. It's great to have, for me, I was thankful to have somebody who was separate from my friends, my family, who was completely detached from me and didn't know me, to help. And I felt like she knew more of what she was talking about. I felt more comfortable around her, and I think that was the key for me, is I needed a counsellor that I felt comfortable around. I felt able to open up how I felt. A couple of those sessions were very, very tough. I didn't have all 8 sessions because I got to a point where I felt I didn't need them anymore. And I think that's also important, is if you feel like you don't need to go or you don't want to go, you shouldn't force yourself into it. Because if you're not ready to talk about it, you're probably not in a place where you're ready to accept somebody's help and solutions. I probably would go to counselling again, and saying probably, I am more than willing to go again, because after my experience with the second counsellor, it makes me feel much more positive and accepting to the help that a counsellor can offer me. It's great having somebody outside of the situation who can talk to you and see it from a different perspective. It's also great bouncing your own mind off of somebody else who isn't in the situation, because they can make you see different things as opposed to what you can, and see the situation in a different light, which is so helpful. I can't even explain how helpful it was. It was very, very strange to be told that I had depression and anxiety. And it was very, very hard for me to accept that, because I don't think, as a teenager, you don't ever see yourself as having depression and anxiety. And I think when somebody tells you that you've got something like that, that you just sort of feel like, I'm not old enough for that. I've always said that I don't feel like I've been through enough to be labelled with having either of those things. I would rather go to counselling and try and manage both of those things over having medication, personally. Medication may help me in the future if it got too much or I wasn't in a position where I wanted to go to counselling and speak about it. It has been talked about with my doctors and things like that, but at the moment I feel like I'm in a place where I don't necessarily need to be on medication for it. It could get to a point where I take a turn for the worst and that's decided is a better solution to help me manage it daily or whatever they feel is necessary. But I feel like it is important that I seek help when I need it. And it may be that it is necessary that sometimes that is outside of my friends and family and stuff, because people that you know can't always help you in the way that you need help. And sometimes you've got to look at the bigger picture and see a solution outside of the bigger picture. Counselling isn't for everybody. My first experience taught me that. Second experience makes me look at counselling from a different light and appreciate that actually it can work, but you have to want it to work and you have to be willing to work with it for it to work. But yeah, I would recommend seeing a counsellor if you feel like you want to talk about it, but you don't know who to talk about it with. It took me a while to get a counsellor through the NHS. It took about 8 weeks before it was about 2.5 months before I got allocated a counsellor. So it does take a while to get through the process if you don't have a college or a university that you're going to or a school or something like that. They may be able to get you through the process a bit faster. I didn't do it directly through my doctor. I found about it online and sort of did it that way. But it is worthwhile doing for myself because I felt like it really helped. And yes, I definitely will, probably, most certainly, I want to say I'm going to go back to counselling at some point. But my phobia of the doctors is too much at the moment and I can't bring myself to go to get referred. I could do it online again, but it's a very long process and I feel like the doctor might be able to help me with that sooner. So I've just got to get over the phobia of the doctors and people being too close to me. I don't like the idea of them being all up in my grill with their stethoscope. So yeah, I feel like the counselling experience is very valuable for myself and for probably other people in my situation, because talking to somebody definitely does help, because it just, for me, it took a weight off my shoulders and relieved a lot of stress, because you're not to-ing and fro-ing with your own mind. You can talk things through and you can open up about it when you are ready to. And it wasn't until a couple of sessions in with my second counsellor that I started opening up properly. I was quite dismissive of the help that was being offered to me to begin with, even though I sought it. And it is something that you have to keep going at and you have to keep plugging at if you want to. For me, I wanted to have the right frame of mind to be dealing with what I was dealing with, and it did help in the end, and it is beneficial to seek the right help, I think, personally. So yeah, that was my views on my counselling experience. If you want to see more about the process that I've gone through, how I'm feeling, what I'm thinking, daily stuff, different stuff that comes up on the channel, like, comment and subscribe, all that stuff, and I shall see you all soon.